In a previous video, we talked about the very common act of adding a second check, and we talk about that in pretty good detail. Sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes there's more adjustments and granular detail that needs to be tweaked, and we want to talk about that real briefly. I'm going to pull up an example employee. Obviously, I'm in the payroll details section of Platinum Pay, and Joseph King is my example. Again, I double-clicked. I say this a lot. I double-clicked on the name, populating the number, and then hit enter on my keyboard. That pulls Joseph from the database. You can see this is an employee with 2 checks right away. Okay, I'm on check 1 of 2. This is the second created check, and maybe that was a bonus check, for instance. Okay. Now, when we're doing that, and I talked about this in a previous video, we got to remember that the system's is going to shove all, assuming they're all taxed the same, on a weekly taxation, for instance, it's going to shove all those checks together. It's going to determine a gross earnings, and it's going to calculate the federal income tax based on that gross earnings, okay? And then it's going to prorate that larger amount over those 2 checks. And sometimes that's not, that's not the desired result. So let me talk very briefly about some of the things that we can adjust here in a check. We're going to go over to the Info Options tab up here at the top, and that's where really the meat and potatoes takes place. In that particular instance, okay, we had previously gone in here and changed this. So by default, this was a weekly payer. So when I first came into the screen, this check was set at the default weekly frequency. If I didn't want it to tax with the normal weekly paycheck, I might change this to reflect the true pay frequency of that particular second check, that bonus, for instance. Maybe it was monthly. This will cause the check to tax monthly by itself and leave the weekly taxation alone. Same thing if it happened to be a quarterly bonus. So that's a good way to untether those 2 checks and make them calc independently. There's a couple other things that clients very commonly use. Maybe you want to shut that direct deposit off. This could be just for a regular payroll check. Maybe it's it could be the last check for someone that's being terminated, okay, and we need to exchange some employee, goods for that last paper check. All we do is visit this direct deposit and we uncheck it. This works in reverse. That door, swings both ways. Let's say you had created the payroll and an employee didn't have direct deposit. Okay, you can save that payroll, absolutely, before submitting it, and go back into the Employee Master, set up direct deposit information, but you got to remember that the check was built taking a snapshot of the employee's information as it existed at the time. So now that I have direct deposit set up in my master file, you could come into me, and let's say I'm Joseph King with no direct deposit. You come to this Info Options tab, and because I have it properly set up, I can now click direct deposit, turn it on. Okay, and you can see this red DD toggles back and forth between the NOR, just letting you know what the status is. You see that from the main side. Those are the 2 most commonly used things. Probably third would be this employee check memo. You could put a one-time bonus, you could put a one-time message on here that's going to appear on the employee's pay stub. In practice, unless people are trained to look at those things, they don't very prominently stand out, but they absolutely do print on the stub. So you might test that out sometime with a check maybe of your own, and just to see how that looks. The final thing I'll show is occasionally clients will do gross-up checks. For instance, I want to hand out a bonus check. That's exactly $500, and you might pick a federal tax rate, for instance. By clicking that information, you can get a gross amount. So we know if we applied a 10% taxation, let's start with a gross of $592.77. That'll land us on $500. So those are just a couple of the brief things, very important things that can be done in the Info Options tab. It gets used a lot, and it's often misunderstood. So hopefully that'll help kind of explain that functionality.